Our glory day our glory season came in 1949. We were drawn against Birmingham City in the third round of the Cup. Birmingham, local derby, full house at Birmingham. We played them at Birmingham and we drew 1-1. The return match, again with a full house, was at Filbert Street. If it were a draw after 90 minutes, we played extra time. Sure enough, it was no score after 90 minutes, and they took the lead midway through the second half of extra time, but we equalised just before the end. So then in those days, immediately after the war, when it came to a second replay, two managers tossed up for the venue. We lost, and the match was to be played on the Monday evening. This match was played in a gale. Nevertheless, we beat them 2-1. So we're on to the next round, and we progressed through each round. We were drawn against Luton. The result of the game was 5-5. We were losing 5-4, and there must have been just seconds to go, and we had a corner. And it was a poor corner. It was a corner that was not too high. It was bending away from the goal before the near post. But to see Jack Lee twist and turn and head this ball into the net like a bullet was out of this world. That was Jack's fourth goal of the match. 5-5. But while this corner was being taken, down below on the bench in the open air was our manager, Johnny Duncan, who at that particular stage was on his knees with his back to the play, actually praying. And then, of course, it was in the net, 5-5. So the following week, it came to the replay. Seemingly enough, the game carried on from where it left off. The first minute, we were losing 1-0. And then we clicked into gear, and at half-time, we were leading 3-1. Immediately after half-time, we had a penalty, which Jack Lee converted. We were leading 4-1. Attacking football from both sides. Within minutes, we were leading 4-3. And then just before the end, Mal Griffiths got the fifth goal. 18 goals in 2 weeks of first-class entertainment.
The best days of Leicester City was the semi-final of the Cup against Portsmouth at Highbury. Portsmouth were the reigning champions of the First Division. They'd won the First Division a month before the season ended. A good team right throughout. That particular day, I mean, we were lambs to the slaughter, more or less, because we were floundering near the bottom of the second division at that time. And it was a case of our manager. And I think Johnny Duncan, I can honestly say he had as much to do with us beating Portsmouth that day as anyone, because in the dressing room before the game, he said, "Look lads," he says, "I'm not going to say much about tactics or anything." He says, "I know you're up against it today, but I've seen this team play the last 2 weeks. And I'll tell you now, man for man, from goalkeeper to outside left, you're a better team." Well, you can imagine what that done to us. We went out of there feeling 10 foot tall, you know, being compared with the First Division champions. Within 10 minutes, a quarter of an hour, Don Revy, who was inside forward then, Don Revy and Mal Griffiths went up the right wing together. 1-2, 1-2. Mal nipped it back to Don. Don banged it at the back of the net. Johnny Duncan's right, you know. Then they equalised, and then we scored another. And then we managed to get the third goal about 11 or 12 minutes from the end. And when you look at that big clock at Highbury, you know, behind the goal, you can say, another 10 minutes, we're at Wembley. It was a great feeling, you know, you kept chasing forever, you know. But I think that was one of the greatest days for Leicester City, because you know you're going to Wembley for the first time in the history of the club.
At the end of the semi-final, we were surrounded by supporters, and it took us a good 5 minutes to get off the pitch completely. Being thirsty and losing a lot of liquid during the game in perspiration, you do need a drink. And the thing that you're thinking about at this stage is probably a cup of tea. On entry into the dressing room, of course, to our surprise, we were all handed a bottle of whiskey each. And being thirsty, one didn't care what the liquid was. So sips of whiskey followed, and very quickly one felt a little bit under the weather. But one amusing part about it was our club doctor, now I believe he'd been drinking whiskey all afternoon, In the dressing room there, first time I'd ever seen him do this, he'd stripped stark naked, was running around, and instead of getting into the warm bath, finally jumped into the stone cold bath. We had to revive our club doctor. That certainly created quite a bit of fun. So twixt the semi-final and the final, we found we had to play 4 or 5 matches. And the first match was against Grimsby Town at Leicester, and we wanted every point that we could possibly get. This is where the first bit of bad luck came our way. It just seemed that as soon as we started playing again, that bad luck was to hit the club. The game against Grimsby Town was about 5 minutes old, and Ian McGraw went to gather this ball, and their centre forward Briggs put his boot in. In those days you had boots with nails sticking out the bottom. It completely severed his little finger, to such a degree that half of the finger was laying in the Filbert Street goal mouth, and I was the substitute goalkeeper, and I found myself in goal after 5 minutes. But it was a game where I can honestly say I can't recall the referee blowing for one foul, and yet we lined up the second half with 8 men. It was, of course, in the days of no substitutes. The injured people at the time were McGraw. Charlie Adam had a broken bone in his elbow. Johnny King was spinning around with concussion. Sandy Scott was wearing a turban with a terrific gash on his forehead, all through body contacts, more or less. Don Revie, who was one of the stars of our side, he received this blow over the nose against West Ham United at Filbert Street. Thinking no more of it, he just survived the following week and was selected to play in the final game before the cup final, and that was at Plymouth. We travelled there on a Friday, and during the night there was such a panic on in the hotel. And through this blow from the game against West Ham, Don Revie had an hemorrhage. Quite obviously, he was rushed to hospital, and this, of course, kept him out of the cup final. But by losing Revie, it made a difference, because the name Don Revie would have called upon probably a couple of the Wolves players to watch him, you see. By this time we thought, well, our luck is a bit grim.
The lead up to the final, everybody went down to Wembley, and we had a marvellous time at Wembley. The atmosphere, well, unbelievable. Trying to explain the build-up, going down in the bus to Wembley Way, the actual crowd coming up, the tension was getting up higher and higher and higher, and you get into the dressing room and you can feel it building up, and when you get into the corridor, there's the 2 sides all lined up, and you walk down the corridor, and as you peer out into the tunnel into Wembley, you find all of a sudden a tremendous roar, and you cannot really give a true reaction to your actual feelings with it, because it's very difficult to record the actual effect on you.
At 2:45, you line up inside the tunnel alongside your opposition, and then you wait there talking to each other and all that. Standing there, it's really silent. You can't hear a thing. Yet a few yards away, there's 100,000 people yelling their heads off. It is incredible. And then we start the march up the tunnel. Now in that tunnel it was quite cool, very cool indeed. And as we're walking up the tunnel, all you can hear is the clips of the studs as they're walking up, the echo of them. And then you come into this open arena. Well, the cheers are unbelievable. It's like someone slapping a piece of rag across your face and so forth. It's a blow. The warm air hits you, you know, and it's like a blow on the head. Then of course you march across the green carpet. In our case we were introduced to the then Princess Elizabeth and now the Duke of Edinburgh, of course. We then start the game. Well, the game itself was fairly evenly poised really, although we were 2 goals down at half time. But in the second half we completely overrun the Wolves for a period of about 20 minutes, I would say. Mal Griffiths, our right winger, scored a goal. And the talking point of it all happened about 5 minutes after that, when the offside rule was not properly interpreted. and it deprived us of an equaliser. And I'm absolutely certain that had we had that goal given to us, we would have swamped Wolves quite easily.
We were so near to winning it because what happened, Johnny Duncan switched the two wingers into inside forward, and we got a little bit of mobility, you know, up front. And the result was we pulled back a goal, which Johnny Duncan said at half-time, if you get one goal, you'll put them under pressure, and there's every chance that you'll get an equaliser. So we did this, got the goal, we scored an equaliser across from the right wing, and Billy Wright was in the middle at that time, and he got a glance of the ball with his head, and Ken Chisholm was on the far left, waiting for this ball coming over to trap it with his left foot. But with this glance of Billy Wright's head, he had to trap it with his right foot onto his left foot and then bang it in the net. And the referee gave a goal immediately. So we were jubilation, you know, we've got the equaliser, we're on the run, you know. I've got them on the run. So we going back to the middle of the field, and there was a linesman standing on the far side with his flag up. Referee went over, Nick Singh changed the decision, gave a free kick for offside. Within 10 minutes afterwards, we were so dejected that Sammy Smythe run more or less through our defence and banged it in the back of the net. That finished us. But it was so near and yet so far, you know. It was a great effort.